All right, so get ready because today we're taking a deep dive into addiction recovery. But we're going to be looking at it through a pretty unusual lens.
Okay.
You shared this handout with me
Yeah.
called Understanding Alcoholic Jackasses.
Okay.
And honestly, the title alone really had me intrigued.
It's definitely a title that grabs your attention right away,
Yeah,
and I think that using a metaphor as strong as alcoholic jackass really hints at the raw honesty
right.
we find in these stories about recovery.
It doesn't sugarcoat anything, that's for sure.
No.
Um, so before we actually jump into the story itself,
Okay.
I'm curious from like a therapeutic standpoint,
Yeah.
what do you think is the power of using an allegory like this, especially when we're talking about something as complex and as sensitive as addiction?
Well, you've got to remember that addiction often traps people in a cycle of shame and self-sabotage.
Right.
And they feel like they're constantly failing, and they're a burden to everyone.
Yeah.
This story, with its humorous title and,
Yeah.
it's almost absurd, it helps to disarm those defenses.
Okay.
It allows people to engage with their emotions
Right.
without feeling directly attacked or judged.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like you're sneaking in this deeper message
Right.
under the guise of a funny and relatable story.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Oh, okay.
The story takes place on kind of an average Midwestern farm,
Okay.
a setting that immediately feels familiar, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And that's important because it makes the story accessible.
Yeah.
It's not some far-off concept. It's grounded in reality
Mhm.
that we can all relate to.
Exactly. And our main character, Burro, the jackass, he's struggling with alcoholism.
Yeah.
He's trying to live up to this name.
Right.
That implies strength and resilience, but constantly falling short.
Yeah.
And this contrast, I think, is where the story really starts to get interesting.
I think that internal struggle is something a lot of people who are battling addiction
Yeah.
can identify with. They want to be seen as capable, strong, but the addiction holds them back and makes them feel like they're constantly disappointing themselves and others.
Yeah, and this is where the story takes a pretty dark turn.
Okay.
Burrow hits this point of utter despair,
Yeah.
and in a moment of desperation decides to jump into a well.
Wow.
He's basically crying out for a miracle at this point.
Think of that well as like a metaphor for the depths of addiction.
Okay.
Burrow's jump represents that feeling of being trapped, hitting rock bottom, with seemingly no way out.
Right.
It's a pretty dramatic visualization of what many people experience
Yeah,
in their struggles
for sure.
with addiction.
Absolutely.
And what's really striking is even after surviving this fall, all Burrow can think about is how much he wants a beer.
Wow.
It shows you how strong of a grip addiction has on the mind.
Yeah, like his physical circumstances like barely register
Right.
compared to that overwhelming craving.
Exactly.
But then the farmer comes in, and his reaction kind of adds another layer to this whole thing.
Yeah.
He's not exactly compassionate.
He is not compassionate at all. He sees Burrow stuck in this well
Right.
And decides the most practical solution is to just bury him alive.
Yeah, talk about a harsh reality check.
I know, right?
I mean, on the surface, you could say he's just being pragmatic.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like a coldness there.
Right.
Like a disregard for Burrow's life almost.
And this is where the story, I think, starts to speak to the societal stigma
Okay.
surrounding addiction. The farmer represents those who view addiction as a weakness, a moral failing, instead of a complex disease.
Right.
So instead of offering help, they choose to just turn their backs on these people,
Yeah.
literally burying the problem instead of addressing it.
It's like he's giving up on Burrow before Burrow even has the chance to try and help himself.
Exactly.
But then just when all hope seems lost, something incredible happens.
Okay.
Burrow hears God's voice.
Wow.
This is the turning point of the story, right?
Yeah, this is where it's just from despair to possibility.
Right. And the question that God asks Burrow is so unexpected.
Do you know the difference between getting buried and being planted?
That's a powerful question.
And at first, Burrow doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He's like, what's the difference? It's all dirt.
Right.
But God's answer is what really changes everything.
What does he say?
So God explains that being buried represents stagnation,
Okay.
right? Being trapped in this cycle of addiction. But being planted implies growth, transformation, the chance to break free
Yep.
and blossom into something new.
So to like a seed.
Exactly. And that's the opportunity that God is offering Burrow, a
Yeah.
chance to be planted to turn his experience into something positive.
Okay.
But here's the key. It's not a passive process. God tells Burro he has to actively participate
Interesting.
in his own salvation.
Yeah.
And with every shovelful of dirt,
Okay.
he has to shake it off and step up.
So he has to put in some work.
Yeah. This is where the story really speaks to that recovery process.
Right.
It's not enough to just want to change. You have to actually put in the effort. The determination, the willingness to fight for every inch of progress.
It's not easy.
And that can be painful even. But as the story shows, it's also the path to freedom. And Burro, despite being, well, a jackass, he starts doing it.
Yeah.
He shakes off the dirt. He steps up and slowly, painfully starts to climb out of that well.
This is the part that always gets me. It would have been so easy for him to just give up, right? To succumb to the weight of it all. But he chooses to fight, and that's what makes the story so hopeful.
Right.
It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for change, even in like the darkest circumstances.
And you know what else is interesting? The farmer and his son, they see Burro struggling.
Yeah.
They see his effort and they start helping him.
Wow.
It's like they're surprised by his willingness to fight for himself.
It highlights a really crucial point about recovery.
Okay.
It often has this ripple effect. When someone takes that first step, that commitment to change can really inspire and challenge those around them. It can change perceptions and break down stigma and foster a more supportive environment.
Absolutely. And eventually, after what I imagine was a really exhausting and painful climb,
Yeah.
Burro manages to jump out of the well. He's not the same jackass who jumped in.
Right.
He's stronger, more determined, full of this newfound sense of purpose.
It's a powerful image of transformation.
Right.
Recovery isn't just about stopping the harmful behavior.
Right.
It's about rediscovering who you are, unearthing your strengths, and embracing a new way of living.
And then the story ends with this line that just sticks with you.
Yeah.
Tell that to the donkey.
Wow.
It's like this declaration of hope, a reminder that even when things seem impossible, even when you're buried under the weight of your struggles, change is possible.
It's a brilliant way to end the story.
Yeah.
It uses humor and a touch of absurdity
Right.
to drive home a profound message. There's always hope. Recovery is a journey, not a destination. And sometimes it takes a little bit of donkey stubbornness
I love that.
to get where you need to be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but think about the bigger question.
Yeah.
What does this story, with all its symbolism and metaphors, really tell us about addiction and recovery?
I think it reminds us that addiction is not a sign of weakness. It's a complex challenge that requires a multifaceted approach.
Right.
It's about understanding the power of metaphor,
Yeah.
the importance of support, and most importantly, the potential for transformation
Yeah.
that exists within each of us.
And for you listening, thinking about your own journey, whatever that may look like, maybe the question to ask yourself is, what's your well? What's the dirt you need to shake off?
Good question.
And what would it mean for you to be truly planted to blossom into the best version of yourself?
Remember, like Burro, you are not alone in this. There's support available, there's hope, and there's always the possibility of a brighter tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into understanding alcoholic jackasses. It's a story that reminds us that even in the darkest moments, there's always the potential for growth, for transformation, for a truly remarkable comeback.